Every year, more than 8 million people visit this building. They photograph it, they perform in it. They call it one of the greatest architectural achievements in human history. But almost nobody knows the story of the man who actually built it, because the man who designed the Sydney Opera House never got to see it finished. He was forced out, humiliated, and he vowed to never set foot in Australia again. He kept that promise until the day he died. His name was Jørn Utzon, a 38-year-old Danish architect working out of a modest office north of Copenhagen who entered a design competition he didn't think he would win. He didn't even fly to Sydney to submit his drawings. He sent them by mail. But those 12 hand-drawn sketches would go on to change the skyline of an entire country. Today, I'm going to tell you 3 things most Australians don't know. 1. How a single 15-minute meeting destroyed the greatest architectural partnership of the 20th century. 2. The moment a government minister said 2 words that haunted Sydney for decades. And 3. The heartbreaking final chapter of a man who designed the world's most famous building, won architecture's highest prize, and never once returned to see it standing. In 1956, the New South Wales government held an international competition to design a new opera house on Bennelong Point, a narrow strip of land jutting into Sydney Harbour. Over 230 entries came in from architects across 28 countries. The judges spent 10 days reviewing them. One of the judges, the legendary Finnish-American architect Eero Saarinen, arrived late. He hadn't seen the original shortlist. When he did, he went back to the pile of rejected entries, and he pulled out design number 218. It was unlike anything else. While every other entry looked like a building, Utzon's design looked alive. It looked like sails, or shells, or something rising up from the harbour itself. Saarinen reportedly said it was the only entry that understood the site, that it was years ahead of its time. On January 29, 1957, Premier Joseph Cahill announced the winner, Jørn Utzon, an unknown 38-year-old Dane that almost nobody had heard of. When word reached him in Denmark, Utzon was stunned. He had entered mostly to test his ideas. He genuinely did not expect to win. He had no idea what was about to happen to him. Utzon moved his family to Sydney and threw himself into the project. And what he was doing was genuinely revolutionary. Nobody had ever built roof shells shaped like this before. They required entirely new mathematics, entirely new engineering techniques. Utzon worked with the structural engineers at Arup for years just to solve how the shells would physically stand up. Construction began in 1959. From the beginning, it was over budget and behind schedule. But Utzon wasn't concerned about that. He was building something that had never been built before. Then, in 1965, everything changed. The New South Wales state government switched hands. After 24 years of Labour rule, the Liberal Party won, and they had campaigned on one specific promise: rein in the costs at the Opera House. The new Minister for Public Works was a man named Davis Hughes, and Hughes wasted no time making clear who was now in charge. He declared that Utzon would only be paid for producing drawings, not for the broader design work and supervision he had been doing for years. He started blocking funding. He started questioning decisions. And by February 1966, after years of delays and disputes, Utzon was owed more than $100,000 in outstanding fees. Hughes wasn't just slowing things down. He was withholding money so that Utzon couldn't even pay his own staff. At noon on the 28th of February 1966, Utzon arrived at the ministerial offices on Bridge Street in Sydney. He had come to discuss the money he was owed. $100,000 in unpaid fees, 4 months overdue. The meeting lasted 15 minutes. Hughes refused to make a decision. He cited an adverse report. He stonewalled. Utzon, fed up, threatened to resign. According to accounts from the time, Hughes looked at him and said, "You are always threatening to quit." Feeling provoked and humiliated, Utzon walked out. Hours later, his secretary hand-delivered a letter to Hughes's office. In it, Utzon accused the minister of forcing him out. Then the government minutes record what happened next. Utzon, in a final confrontation, told Davis Hughes, "If you don't do it, I resign." And Davis Hughes replied, 2 words, "I accept." "I accept your resignation. Thank you very much. Goodbye." Just like that. 40 years of architectural genius dismissed in a single sentence. Utzon later described the situation with the kind of dark humor only a truly betrayed person can manage. He called it malice in Blunderland. The reaction was immediate, and it was furious. Over 1,000 people marched through the streets of Sydney to State Parliament, led by some of Australia's most respected artists and intellectuals, demanding Utzon be reinstated. A petition of 3,000 signatures was delivered to the Premier. Architects, designers, and artists from around the world wrote letters of protest. The international architectural community was in uproar. Even Utzon's own engineering partner, Jack Zuns of Arup, the firm that had built the shells, sent a confidential telegram personally begging Utzon to reconsider. Hughes responded by offering Utzon a consolation prize, a reduced role as a subordinate consultant, with no real power over the project he had created. Utzon refused, and on the 28th of April, 1966, 9 weeks after that 15-minute meeting, Jørn Utzon and his family boarded a plane out of Australia. He moved so quickly that they almost missed the flight. They boarded just minutes before the doors closed, specifically to avoid the press that had gathered at the airport. Utzon told his staff he expected to be back within 2 years, that the government would realize they couldn't finish the building without him. He was never invited back. The Sydney Opera House opened on the 20th of October, 1973. Queen Elizabeth II performed the ceremony. Jørn Utzon was not there. He wasn't invited. The building that bore the shape of his imagination, the shells that emerged from his 12 hand-drawn sketches mailed from a small office in Denmark, was opened without him. The interiors were finished by a committee of Australian architects led by Peter Hall. Utzon later said they didn't understand what he was trying to do. He called the finished concert hall acoustically compromised, a shell of his original vision. He retreated, first to Denmark, then to the Spanish island of Majorca, where he designed a house for himself and lived quietly for the rest of his life. In 2003, nearly 4 decades after he walked out of that 15-minute meeting, Jørn Utzon received the Pritzker Prize, architecture's highest honor, the Nobel Prize of the design world. He was 84 years old, and he was too ill to attend the ceremony. His sons accepted it on his behalf. In 1999, a new New South Wales Premier, Bob Carr, wrote to Utzon asking if he would re-engage with the Opera House. Utzon agreed and worked remotely on a small number of improvements, most notably the Utzon Room, the only interior space in the entire building that actually reflects his original vision. But even then, Utzon never returned to Australia. He worked on the building from Europe, from photographs, from drawings. He died on the 29th of November, 2008. He was 90 years old. Jørn Utzon never saw the finished Sydney Opera House in person, not once. The man who designed it, the man whose sketches defined a skyline, the man thousands of people marched for in the streets of Sydney, he never came back. If this story hit you the way it hit me when I first found it, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who thinks they know Sydney. And if you want to know the next dark truth hiding behind Australia's most famous landmarks, subscribe. Because in next video, we're talking about the $102 million that nobody was supposed to spend.